Good evening, everyone. My name is Cindy McGuire, and I'm the Programming and Marketing Coordinator at the Leavenworth Public Library. Thank you for joining us for this very special program to commemorate Yom HaShoah, which is Holocaust Remembrance Day, and also to celebrate National Library Week. Our speaker is Director Leah Warshawski. She's the granddaughter of Sonia Warshawski, who is the subject of her film, Big Sonya. Leah produces and directs documentary-style features, television, commercials, and branded entertainment in remote parts of the world. Her first feature, Finding Hillywood from 2013, won 6 awards, including the Critics Award at the Sevastopol Documentary Festival and the Audience Award at the Napa Film Festival, and it was screened at more than 65 other festivals. Leah's career in film began in Hawaii, working in the Marine Department for Lost and Hawaii. She advises filmmakers on outreach, marketing, and hybrid distribution plans. In addition, Leah co-founded RwandaFilm.org, a LinkedIn for Rwandan filmmakers supported by B-Peace and the Academy of Motion Pictures. She recently gave a TED Talk entitled, How Do You Cope with the Trauma You Didn't Experience? When she's not on a plane, you can find her swimming, hiking, and dreaming of whales. And she's joining us from Hawaii today, so I'm sure the weather's better there than it is here in Kansas. Yeah. But tonight I am pleased to welcome Leah Warshawski.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. What a strange new world this is. But thank you. Yeah, I'm honored to be here and be able to talk about the film. I haven't talked about it in a couple weeks, at least. We've been doing quite a few Zoom Q&As and online screenings. Seems to be a good way for people to sort of watch the film on your own time and then talk about it this way versus doing anything in person. So it's a treat to meet everyone, and thank you for making time. I think that Cindy is going to moderate some questions, and I believe that everyone has seen the film at least one time. I know some people here have seen it many more times than that. But if you have questions, I think the plan is to type them into the chat, and then Cindy is going to pick out a question and ask me, and then I can respond that way. Is that right, Cindy? Did I get that right? Okay.
Yes.
I can, while you're thinking of your questions, I can just give you the one answer that I know everyone's going to ask, which is, how is Sonia doing? Some people on this call have probably talked to her more recently than I have, but I did talk to her about 2 weeks ago, and right after she got her second vaccination, or her second shot. So she's 95 and vaccinated and ready to go back to work. So she hasn't had much downtime. I mean, even in the downtime, if you know Sonia, it's not really downtime for her. So she's anxious to get back to work, and she wanted to assure me that she has been going to the grocery store. So she thought it was important that I know that she is still leaving the house quite a bit. On her own terms, of course, because that's the only way she does things. But other than that, she's doing good. She's still kicking. She's still going strong. Vernon from the shop, who was the security guard at the mall. If you've seen the movie, you'll remember Vernon. Vernon had a scare with COVID about 8 months ago. He was in the hospital. He was in a pretty bad state, but he ended up getting better and making it out. So that was a little bit scary, but other than that, yeah, everyone in the family is healthy and safe at the moment, and just taking things sort of day by day.
Well, Leah, we have our first question.
Okay.
what is Sonia's biggest challenge now to continue to spread the love?
Well, I mean, she, since COVID, she's not able to, she doesn't have a computer or internet or any technology wherewithal. So she's not able to do, speaking on Zoom. So all of her in-person speaking has, been put to a stop for the last year. And she was slowing down just a little bit pre-COVID. She was being a little bit more selective about the times that she does go out and speak to really large groups. So I think the challenge is just not being able to reach the same amount of people. But we've sort of taken that up with the film in terms of we're able to reach, hundreds of thousands of people because of the movie. And Sonia can reach so many, but the movie takes it to another level. So, even though she hasn't been able to do what she does in person, because we made the film and have been distributing the film for a couple of years already, and we're still going. I think I estimated recently that we've had more than 500 to 700,000 people who have watched the movie in between all of our screenings, schools, online, internationally, everything that we're doing to get the film out there. So we're doing as much as we can to spread her message while she can't do it in person.
Well, I have a question. When I was watching the film, the most touching thing to me was when she visited the prison.
Yes.
And I just was bawling during that whole sequence. Does she, or before the pandemic, did she go to prisons on a regular basis?
She wasn't really going on a regular basis, but Sue Ellen Freed, who is the head of that organization, Reaching Out from Within, Sue Ellen has actually become a really good friend to Sonia. They went and got their shots together both times. And she, was really the impetus. She was the reason that Sonia was able to go. She invited Sonia to that program. So I think over the course of our filming, we went with Sonia and Sue Ellen. I think we went 3 times to film. And then we went back and we showed the film when it was done to the men who were in the movie. And that was quite powerful when we did that. But she, because she's 95 years old right now, it's a big effort to go out and do things like that. So she wasn't as mobile as she would have wanted to be. And there is a program actually that we were trying to get funding to do, but haven't been successful yet, where we would be able to get the film onto iPads that the inmates have access to on an education platform. And we were hoping that if we could do that, then we could spread it to a lot more inmates, because they do have technology inside, and they're looking for content, and our film is safe content for them, and it fits really well. But everything like that, requires funding, and that's where we usually have our challenges. It's still the film industry at the end of the day, so it's completely off the table, but it is something I'd love to do at some point, just to be able to reach more inmates. Again, while Sonia can't do it, we have the film.
Well, kind of along that vein, there's a question that says, in addition to backing the film, what charities would you suggest we back to spread the love?
That's a really good question. I think it just depends on what you're most interested in. There's a lot of organizations who are working hard to bring Holocaust education into classrooms. That's what we're trying to do in terms of our film and the education package that we created for it. We work really hard to try and get funding to send the film into schools with all of the curriculum materials. But there's so many different avenues for funding. I mean, you could fund education in prisons, you could fund education programs, or bringing Holocaust survivors back to schools when that happens. And then there's regional organizations. So I know in the Midwest Center for Holocaust Education always needs help. I know in Washington State, where we lived for a while, the Washington Holocaust Center for Humanity, there are regional organizations who have great programs who all need help. So, first I would say look locally to see what you can do. Obviously, we have a lot of options through our film and education, just to, give to whatever schools you'd like to, or just give a grant and we can choose the schools. The USC Showa Foundation is probably the biggest one. They're based in Los Angeles, and they have testimonies, including Sonia's testimony, on file for Holocaust survivors. They're a larger organization, but of course, none of these organizations run without funding. So I think it's really depends on what your specific interest is and where you want to have an impact. Is it regional, national, international? There's certainly tons of organizations who need help, especially right now after the last year.
We have a question from somebody that wants to know the best way to view the film. And speaking from a public library's perspective, if your library has Kanopy as part of its digital content, you can watch it on there for free with your library card. Are there other ways, Leah, that they can view the film?
Yeah, not for free. Kanopy is the only way that I'm aware of to view for free. It's also on Amazon and Amazon Prime and Vimeo on demand. So you can purchase it on a really good quality version on Vimeo. I think it's $5.99. And then Amazon and Amazon Prime digitally. For schools, we have physical DVDs that we send, and we can always send a link for our school package. But just to watch the movie, I'd say the easiest way, if you already are using Amazon or Amazon Prime or Vimeo, is one of those three. And then of course, if you have a library card, Kanopy.
In filming this, was it difficult to get Sonia to cooperate?
Well, I mean, anyone who knows Sonia knows that she loves to be in front of the camera. So that part was not hard at all. I mean, she's a star. So she didn't really, I mean, she would get annoyed with us sometimes because we would just film, we'd film everything and we'd have to keep putting the microphone on her, in the mornings. And there were some long days where I think she, we'd want to do things a couple times, and she in general was very, very patient with us. So filming her wasn't really the issue, but definitely talking about some of the things that we did in the movie, her becoming aware of how much her trauma has impacted other people in the family. I think that was obviously really tough and not something that she expected. And, for the longest time, pretty much until the film was done, she thought that the film was just about her, and we were going to use archival footage, and we were going to include all of the poems that she's ever written and the drawings that she's ever drawn. And she thought, as much as we told her what the film was, and I think she just really wanted it to be just all about her. which would be a totally different film. But what really impacts people, obviously Sonya is a charismatic protagonist and a very complicated person and a great, we couldn't have cast a better star for a movie like this. I mean, she's perfect in that way, but just a film about Sonya really doesn't do what we set out to do. And we wanted to make something modern that everybody can relate to. And we just felt like we really needed to hear from other people in the family, and we needed to go to school with her and hear from kids and teenagers and in middle school and high school. And in order to make it relatable, something that people want to watch now and forever, it has to be about more than one person. It has to be about more than Sonya. And she's quite complicated, as you know, because you watched the movie. I mean, it's not cut and dry. There's a lot of gray area there, which makes it great as a filmmaker, because you want to explore all of the gray area, right? I mean, those are the interesting parts. She's funny and quirky, and the scenes that we have with her, I think are great where they are. But without the other layers, without the other elements, without family and intergenerational trauma and schools and prisons, without all of those elements, it wouldn't be a film that we were excited about making, and it wouldn't be something that has a modern impact. And that's relatable and universal. So she might understand that now, but I can't, no guarantees. She definitely enjoyed watching it. I think she's seen it more than anyone else, but it was a joy to share be able to share the film with her and share the love with her, share what the accolades and the kudos, and for her to experience that, and for anyone to experience that is pretty powerful. But for her, the film about her, and she was early 90s when we premiered it, it was pretty overwhelming for everyone.
Do you think that you being her granddaughter helped? I think, well, I guess what I want to say is, I think if somebody else who wasn't related to her had made this film, it would have been the film that you were talking about, where she would have been the star. But since
Right.
you knew some of this background and how it affected your family and affected the community, I think that probably helped that you were her relative.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think it's a blessing and a curse. Absolutely. And my husband made the film with me, and he, obviously didn't grow up in our family. So we had another kind of outside viewpoint that was really helpful. And I think I read something, gosh, I need to pull this quote back up, but I read something a few years ago that said that the first if we're talking about survivors, the first generation can't tell their stories because they're too entrenched in it. And the second generation can't tell those stories because it's affected them too much. It's too hurtful, it's too personal, and they're also entrenched. And it's the responsibility of the third generation to tell the stories from an outside perspective that's just close enough, but not so close that you get whitewashed. So that made a lot of sense for me, because I can see that in my own family. I can see how Sonya's life and her trauma and the way that she is really impacted her 3 kids. And it's hard, it's really difficult growing up in that household. But for me, because I'm just far enough removed, I didn't grow up in Kansas City. I have, genetically, I'm connected to my family, obviously, but I'm not in the day-to-day drama. I can, step outside of that and try and see things in a different way. And I know that helped. because we could go to Kansas City and we could film, and we'd be there for, sometimes a couple weeks or maybe a week. And then we'd go back, we'd leave, we'd go back to life, and then we'd come back and get entrenched again. And we would go back and forth. Whereas, some other members of my family, they don't have that choice. Some people don't have that choice. They're just too close. So I do know that being a little bit removed really helped us explore some of the difficult parts of this movie. It was eye-opening, and it was really tough, but it was also really joyful and validating. And it was a really, there was so many things at the same time, which is actually exactly the way Sonya is, if you think about it. That was our experience making the film. Everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between, all at the same time. And completely overwhelming, overpowering, but joyful. And we had a lot of really fun moments, sad moments, you name it. I feel like we all went through 10 years of pretty intense therapy in some way. So.
Well, I know that the other scene that was very emotional for me was the scene where your dad was trying to read that poem,
right.
and he just couldn't finish. Did you expect he was going to do that?
No, I mean, obviously no, we wouldn't, no, we didn't expect that at all. I mean, it was, and the thing with that scene is when it happened, we immediately turned the camera off, and we promised my dad that scene would never be in the movie. And we actually, it wasn't in the film actually until the last minute. We kept it, and I really didn't want to revisit that. We knew it was uncomfortable, and we actually edited the film without that scene. And then one of our editors found it and I can't remember where we were at, like a work in progress screening or something. We were somewhere that had to do with the film, and he called us and he said, why did you guys keep this from me? Like, this is the entire movie and it's not in the movie, and I don't know why, and we really need to talk about this. And I said, absolutely not. We made a promise. We're not putting it in there. And then they can, over time, sort of convinced me that it is the right thing to do for the film. And as hard as it is personally, the film, making the best film we could was the priority. And I know it was the right thing to do. And it is a scene that people remember and also relate to. I mean, a lot of people, every time we screen the movie, people come up and talk to us about that. And it's like a lot of second generation, children of Holocaust survivors really, really relate to that scene. They've reached out to my dad separately, they've purchased the poem from him. I mean, it's hopefully been really validating for my dad as well, because a lot of people feel the same way. And oh, my dad just signed on. So, oh, there is my dad. So I don't know, Dad, do you want to say anything about the poem scene? I know it's your favorite scene in the movie. You'll have to unmute yourself though, if you want to talk about it.
There we go. I'm sorry I was a little late.
That's okay. We're talking about the poem scene in the movie, and Cindy asked if that was something we planned and how you felt about it. And I just finished saying it's your absolute favorite scene in the movie. I'm kidding.
To answer your question, Cindy, it was totally unplanned. And it happened just like you see it in the film. We came up to my office, and Leah and Todd said, since I write a lot of poetry, I had ever written anything about Sonya. And I was looking at my bookcase right in front of me, and I remembered that quite a while ago, I had written a poem about her that was published in a collection called Ghosts of the Holocaust. But I hadn't seen it in years. I literally didn't remember the poem at all. I remembered that I had one in there. So I opened up the book that was still shrink wrapped. It hadn't been opened in like 30 years. And as I was reading the poem, a lot of feelings welled up, and I couldn't finish reading the poem. So Todd pulled me aside afterwards and said, and I'll never forget this, "Don't worry, Maury, we won't include this in the film." This won't be in the film. So a few months later, Leah and Todd are back in town again, and they're showing us a rough cut. And sure enough, there's the scene. And I said to Todd, you really need to do what's right for the film. And if
Yeah.
it works for the film, then we need to keep it in. And then I ended up going to a studio and recording the rest of it with
Oh yeah, I
Okay.
had forgotten about that part, that we went
Yeah.
back to the studio. That's right.
And that's the part you hear at the end of the film when I
Mhm.
repeat the poem. Yeah. So that's that story.
And since
Never
then,
trust a filmmaker.
Ghosts of the Holocaust has sold more copies than it ever did.
There was a rush on it and you can't find it anymore. It's out of print. And if you want a copy, it's like $300. But if you want the poem, write me and I can send you the poem.
Oh, I see that Regina is on too. Hi, Regina. Do you want to say anything, Regina? You'll have to unmute yourself if you want to say hello. There you go.
Hi. Glad that I could join, and I'm just interested to hear what the questions are in the comments.
Good to see you. Thanks for
Good
joining.
to see you.
All right.
Hi.
So I guess, Cindy, if anybody has questions for my dad or Regina as well, since they're both here.
This is Heather. I want to say hi, Leah. It's good to see
Hey,
you.
Heather.
I just want to know, as children, Regina, how do you feel having all this happen and around your mom, and starting out with all the things you did with all the schools and the prison ministry? Does it feel like, was the movie, after it was over, was it anticlimactic? Did you feel like, now what do we do? Or how did that resonate with you as a child?
So I've been speaking with my mother now for 15 years or so. And so that has continued, but of course during COVID, we haven't done anything. But the movie, she already had a following through her tailor shop, but the movie just put it on steroids. And she loves being the center of attention. So I would say that once that movie was out there, which has been 3 years now, 4 years, the fan club.
2016, end of 2016.
Okay, so the fan club just has grown exponentially, and she's loved every minute of it. And for me, it's been kind of a mixed bag. Part of it is that I was already spending time with my mother and doing the Holocaust thing, and that became more intense. And then I was feeling more of a responsibility to get her out there as much as we could, because there aren't many survivors left, particularly in Kansas City area. She was still the only one who was willing to go out and speak, and nobody can tell their story like a survivor. So there was the constant barrage of that, where at some point I finally had to start pulling back because it was just getting too emotional for me to be in it constantly. So but the movie was so enlightening on so many different planes, and that is what really made it all worth it. Not so much what happened to my mother during the war, because there's thousands and thousands of stories out there and so many movies that have been made about the Holocaust, but the fact that she was able to come through it, the fact how the trauma affecting everybody, and how there's trauma in everybody's families. So So, and now my mother, who's now 95, she has definitely slowed down, especially since COVID. I'm not really sure how much I'm going to take her out anymore, because it just, I think now it's just a little bit too much for her too.
Thanks, Heather. Any other questions?
I have a question. One thing that was really amazing to me was that she didn't hate the people, you know, the Nazis, but that she wouldn't, you know, she said it wasn't for her to forgive, it was for a higher power. Did Regina and Maury, did your dad have that same philosophy about it?
You
I don't know.
My father was not as vocal about his experiences. My mother, and my recollection, Maurice might be different, was that he wasn't really fond about talking about it. You know, if you'd ask him a question, as far as how he felt, I mean, I think, I don't know if he was filled with hate, but he certainly didn't like the Germans. And I don't think I ever heard him say anything like my mother says, love over hate. I've never heard my dad say anything like that. So I think he had definite negative feelings about them. Yeah.
He kept his feelings to himself. It was really hard to know how he felt about things. He never expressed emotion very much. He was an emotional person, but he never expressed it much. But I would agree with Regina's assessment.
How do you two feel about her philosophy? I mean, do you agree with that, or?
I'll let you go
Well,
first, Maury.
Hate doesn't get you very far. It ends up eating you up. So I do agree with her that far. But it's a little hard for me to forgive. So Sonia and I are probably on the same page there.
Yeah, I feel about that the same way 100%, but it is difficult for me to, because it's impossible to understand what happened, how it happened, that human beings could be so evil to other human beings. So I honestly have mixed feelings about it. I'm not saying I hate anybody, but I certainly definitely on board with the forgiveness. So I guess, yeah, pretty much feeling the same way that she does. But I know she, you know, it took her a while. I mean, she wasn't at first, when she would talk about the Holocaust, she wasn't like, well, we have to, you know, live and let live. And no, there was a definite disdain towards the enemy. So I think it took her a long time before she started to feel that way, that that you shouldn't hate.
Okay, we have a couple more questions here. Does Sonia go into the tailoring shop anymore?
Well, praise the Lord. She just started going in last week. She got her 2 shots. And oh my God, I'm so thrilled she's going back. She's slowly starting to come back, because being confined during COVID, it really aged her. That year and a half, I mean, it really aged her. And so now I can see she's starting to get a little more energy back. And it's taking her a while. And I don't think she'll ever be, as funky as she was before COVID. But she's still going in. She didn't want to give the shop up. She's got like 2 or 3 women who've been renting it for her. And when she goes in, she really doesn't do any physical, any of the sewing, or she'll do an occasional fitting, but it's just good for her to be there and, you know, talk to people and mess around. And she tells me now that people see her car parked out front, they're so excited that they come in and say hello to her.
Well, I'm sure she has a ton of visitors, as always, not for the tailoring.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question here. How much did you understand as children about your parents' experiences during the war?
Well, for me, I knew from a very young child that something horrible had happened to them. They were always around other survivors. When they were socializing, they were always getting together. And they'd be together a short period of time, and you'd start hearing them talking about what happened to them in Europe. So, I mean, I knew, I can remember just laying in bed, 6, 7, 8 years old, wondering what it was like for my parents being in a concentration camp. So that was my memories. I don't know about Maury.
Well, we knew that something had happened to them, and as we got older, we knew more about the war and concentration camps and the history of the war. But their personal histories, we didn't get a lot of detail until much later, until I was in my 20s, when I did an oral history project with everyone in the family.
Well, for
I think-
me,
yeah.
for me, as far as the details, growing up, we would ask questions, but my mother would get so emotional that we would stop, or at least I would stop. I was like, okay, I don't want to know anymore. I'm upsetting you too much. But I think I had a pretty good grasp of what had happened. I didn't know maybe the chronological order, but I knew bits and pieces of all the horrible stories. So I'm sorry, Maury, if I interrupted you.
No, it's good.
Well, I know personally for me, I'm Jewish, but all of my great grandparents and great grandparents came here at the beginning of the 20th century. So we escaped the Holocaust. But going to Hebrew school, I remember them showing us, when I was in 2nd grade was the first time I really knew about the Holocaust. They showed us these horrific films in Hebrew school, and I have never forgotten that. My dad's best friend, his whole family was wiped out, and they smuggled him out of Germany to England. And so he would tell us stories, but it really upset him to talk about it too, because he was the only person in his family still alive. So I don't know how religious your family was, going to the synagogue or Hebrew school or Sunday school, did you have to experience that as well, and knowing that your parents went through that? Did you get any education other than hearing your parents and some of their friends?
I did not, other than from my relatives who are all survivors and their friends. But in school, I have no recollection of any Holocaust history or information through my schooling.
Yeah, it's interesting you should bring that up, because you would think that the one place you would get a good Holocaust education would be at Hebrew school, but we didn't.
Okay, we have another question. Did your great aunt ever get to see the film?
Yes, she did.
Yes.
In
A couple
Tel
times.
Aviv. Yeah.
Oh, which aunt? Are you talking about Sonia's sister or the Anne Fetterman, who's in the movie?
I don't know. The person who asked the question probably needs to clarify.
Well, both Sonia's sister, before she died, saw the movie in Israel, and Anne Fetterman, who recently passed away, also saw the film a couple of times, and we were able to, I think she was living at Village Shalom, and they purchased the educational version of the movie so that they could have movie nights at Village Shalom. And I know that they had a couple of those where Anne was probably signing autographs afterwards. Yes. But yeah, and yes, Sonia's sister did see the film.
The young woman who started, it was towards the end of the film, she started an organization because she was inspired by Sonia speaking to her at the middle school. Do you still keep in touch with her?
Yeah, we still keep in touch with Caroline, and maybe hopefully see her at some point before the end of the year. I don't know what the latest and greatest is because I talked to her a couple months ago, but she's exploring her options as an adult. She did write a book about social impact and how to make an impact if you're a teenager, kind of like a workbook that she got a grant for, wrote that, and then was able to give out the books for free to teachers who were interested. So at the moment, I don't know exactly what. I know that she was doing a lot of digital media. She's sort of an influencer, I guess, at her age. So just trying to figure out what her next move is going to be. But she's always got her hands in a lot of different interesting things at the same time. So we have no worries about her at all. But yeah, it's been fun to sort of mentor her and watch her grow up. And yeah, she always jokes that we watched her grow up in the movie. We met her when she was in 7th grade. So
hi, Leah, this is Evan and Karen.
hey, Evan and Karen.
I just wanted to tell you that we're the beneficiaries of the pandemic as far as Sonia's concerned, because she's made us barley soup a couple of times, and she's made some other nice dishes for us. So we're eating pretty nicely off of Sonia's.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean,
so we've enjoyed that part of it. But
yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, is there a follow-on project for you and Todd with this, that there's maybe not a part 2 with Sonia, but something else that connects?
We're working on a lot of other projects, but the thing that really connects the most we're definitely not going to make a big Sonia 2, but there are other things that we want to do with the film that we have. I mean, I spoke about being able to get it into prisons. That would be a huge goal of ours, to just use the film that we already made and spread it wider and wider. We also, kind of had thought that we'd like to make a 3D hologram of Sonia, like they're doing at the Showa Foundation with other Holocaust survivors. But to do that well, to send a team out to where Sonia is and film that the way that it needs to be filmed, is around $300,000. So we would rather do something like that while Sonia is still healthy and well, and take some of those opportunities versus putting that energy and funding and support into another film. We'd love to just use the film that we have and try and get it out to as many people as we can. And if opportunities like the hologram, if we could make that happen, that would really be the dream, because a program like that, literally, Sonia, for better or for worse, Sonia lives on forever, in that way. It's a hologram you actually interact with. You ask questions that the person answers you back. I mean, that's a legacy. We could certainly do another film, but it wouldn't have the same impact as the one that we already made. So we're definitely still working on the project. I don't work on it as much as I was a year ago or 2 years ago, but we are still doing online screening. You know, organizations are hosting screenings. I'm still doing Q&As. We're still selling international broadcast rights. So we're going country by country until they say no. And we have some more countries to go through. So we're still working on that. And then of course, education, which is our biggest goal, and trying to fit, you know, see what grants we're eligible for. Always looking for ways to get the film into schools, because, you know, the next generation, in my generation, within our lifetime, all the survivors are going to be gone. So how do we continue to educate and use this film as a tool? That's our biggest goal.
Have you shown it in Germany?
It was shown in Germany. I wasn't there, but the owners of the Glenwood Arts Movie Theater took the film to Germany because they had a sister program, and they did a screening there. And from what I understand, it was well received, but I didn't get a ton of feedback. I don't know that there would have been more than 200 people who saw it there. We are trying German television, but so far no dice on that. So, you know,
But
I was
Sonia did
hoping.
make the German edition of Cosmopolitan magazine.
That is true, yeah, which is probably better than getting it on TV there. So.
She's in Cosmo.
She's in Cosmo, that's right, in Germany. I had thought
What
that
about-
would have sparked something, and we definitely tried to use that to interest stations there, but so far we don't have any interest.
What about Poland?
Poland, we did, after every single film festival turned us down in Poland, we were able to get it onto Polish television on Canal Plus. So it has, it was broadcast in Poland, even though we didn't get into any film festival in Poland that we applied for, which was shocking. But I'm almost glad that we didn't, because we actually got paid to show it on Polish television versus sending it to a festival for free. So it worked out in our favor, I believe, but it's tricky. There's a lot of politics that we don't completely understand, and lots of reasons that films don't get into festivals, even when you think it might be an ideal fit. And Russia was, Big Sonya is big in Russia. Russian television was the first large station actually to purchase the film internationally. So what do we know? You just never know. And we're still going. So hopefully we'll have some more announcements before the end of the year.
I have one more question. So you're saying it would take $300,000 to do this holographic type of a presentation where you could do this so that Sonya would live on in perpetuity. Is that
it's kind of scary when you put it that way, but yes. You may have seen this program on 60 Minutes. It's aired a couple of times. It's called New Dimensions in Testimony. It's a program where the Showa Foundation is filming survivors the room is green, and there's 10 different cameras, and it's quite a large setup in order to make a hologram. So what they do is they come and they film with a survivor for 7 to 10 days. Every day, same clothes. Every day, 8 to 10, however long you can go, long days. And they ask every question under the sun. Sometimes they ask it more than once. And they generate data that has questions and answers, so that when they make the hologram, and it's a life-size hologram that goes in schools or museums, or you can actually use it on your laptop, you can ask the hologram a question, and the hologram will respond from the database. So the idea is to allow for a conversation between a survivor who is gone and a student or somebody in the present. And in that way, these survivors live on and are able to educate and have conversations and really make an enormous impact. They've done this with a handful of survivors already, but the reason it's so expensive is because it's so much data. I mean, when you think about 7 to 10 days, 8 to 10 hours of questioning every day, and then you have to edit all the possible answers that could come up in order to make this hologram and then be able to fit it, make a life-size version, and then get it onto the computers. It's very labor intensive and technology intensive, but it is the future. I mean, it's already happening. It's already being used in museums and schools, but I think in the next 5 to 10 years, it'll be everything. It's pretty exciting. It's a little bit scary and kind of weird when we did a demo. We went to the Showa Foundation and did a demo a few years ago, and it was crazy. But it is the future, and it's what's happening. And we know that, I mean, obviously Sonia's a perfect candidate because she doesn't have any problem talking for 7 to 10 days straight. And she's still with it. She still, has her wits. She's able to do that. Not a lot of people are. So yeah, if anybody is interested in contributing to that, or if you're aware of any grants, so far we've not been able to find a way to make that happen, but it's certainly a big dream of ours. So we'd love to talk with people about that.
So if we found $300,000, the ideal location to come do that would be here in the Kansas City area.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had thought before COVID, I mean, we had thought, but Sonia is not, it just would not be as comfortable to travel. And she, requires an entourage, which well, Heather. So I would send you with her. No, I'm just kidding. And Karen and Evan.
Mom and Dad will escort her around. Evan and Karen.
She's a personal escort. No, we would do it at a studio in Kansas City so that it would be as comfortable as humanly possible. But it requires a team of the Showa Foundation team, at least 4 people, potentially more than that. So we'd bring the production to Sonia as always. And I think that's the best way to do it. But we'd rent a studio and she could come every day, as much as she has capacity for. And of course, if she's going to do it, we're all going to be there for the behind the scenes. And we never, 10 years ago when we started filming, we never really imagined the possibilities that we'd have now. And things are moving so fast, and technology is moving fast, and things are changing so much. We're just trying to keep up. And Sonia's 95. And so obviously we're just, when we were making the film, we were just praying that we would be done in time for her to experience it and see it. And now that we made that happen, we're sort of like, okay, what now? What's next?
We have another question, which is relating to the showing in other countries. Do you have dubbing or subtitles for the film in different languages?
They do have subtitles in different, I don't own those, but when a station purchases the film for broadcast, they do put subtitles on the movie. So we don't currently, if you try to watch the film on Amazon or Amazon Prime, I don't believe that they would have subtitles. But if you're watching it in Poland, they do have subtitles for television. And that's something we're absolutely willing to do if somebody wants to fund that effort. Of course, we'd love to have the film subtitled in as many languages as possible. It was, we did a screening. We were nominated for the Shanghai International Film Festival Awards, and they translated the film into Chinese, and it was pretty cool to see the Chinese subtitles on a big screen.
How was it received there?
Surprisingly well. I mean, we had no idea what we were walking into. It turns out that we ended up going to the Shanghai, their version of the Academy Awards, which they didn't tell us before we got there. But of course, when we got there, they told us we were nominated. We were the only American film nominated. We didn't end up winning, but we still went to the ceremony, and it was just insane. We had 5 screenings, and every screening was packed, so totally sold out. And we watched all the subtitles in Chinese, and then afterwards, actually, what was the most surprising is how many people came up and related to my dad and Regina and Debbie's experience as the second generation, and told us, we have a lot of pain and trauma because of the Japanese-Chinese War. And, we were put in ghettos and concentration camps, and we have generations of trauma from that. And, oh my gosh, I really relate to, Regina and your dad, because my mom is, overbearing, and, Tiger Mom, I think, got it's originally from China. So they, a lot of men actually were coming up, and just telling us, oh my gosh, yeah, my mom is just like that. I totally get it. And yeah, it was just it was very lost in translation, but the heart, the intent and the heart and the soul of the film really resonated with people there. That was an experience I would have never imagined. I would have never thought that it would do so well in China. So that was a trip.
Well, we've come to 8 o'clock. So if anybody has any last questions, please ask them.
Yeah, I'm happy to make myself available in email if you have a burning question that comes to you in the middle of the night. My email's on the Big Sonya website. So if you go to bigsonya.com, you can find me there pretty easily, and I'm always happy to answer something quickly if it comes up. Thanks to my dad and Regina for joining. It's really awesome to have you be a part of this. I appreciate it.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
it was very great that you both joined. We got a bonus.
Super bonus. It's a little weird because we used to do, when we were screening the film before COVID, we were doing a screening like every other night. And we haven't done it in a while. So I'm a little out of practice, but you guys did great.
Thank you for having us.
We're very proud of the film and very proud of Leah for doing it.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you, Leah and Maury and Regina.
Thank you, Cindy, for hosting. Yeah, we appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And thank you for everyone who joined us. This has been our most successful Zoom program during the last
Yay!
year.
Oh,
We'll take
Big
it. We'll
Sonya
take it.
rules.
Yes, and Sonia, please thank her for us. I just fell in love with her when I saw the film. She reminds me of my own grandmother who came from Romania and was extremely overbearing as well. Even though she didn't go through the Holocaust, she had that same personality, so I could relate.
Well,
Very
thank
old
you.
world.
I will.
Thank you, Cindy, for hosting. If anyone's interested in hosting a Q&A screening, please get in touch. We're happy to do it. And we've been doing a lot actually the last couple months. And now that it's April and Genocide Awareness Month, and the anniversary of when Sonya was liberated happens in April. So there's a lot happening, and we'll always accommodate if we can. So thank you.
Adios.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Good evening.
Hey,
Thank
Nicole,
you.
good to see you. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.